I had no reason to doubt him, until that night. The message came in at exactly 6:42 p.m. Working late. Don't wait up. I remember the time because I glanced at the clock while stirring a pot on the stove. The kitchen smelled like garlic and warm bread. The house was quiet in that familiar, comforting way that comes only from years of shared routines. Nothing felt wrong. Nothing felt urgent. It was just another ordinary evening in a life I believed was steady. He worked late often. That text wasn't unusual. It felt normal. Almost reassuring. For nearly 10 years, messages like that had meant the same thing: responsibility, dedication, a man doing what he needed to do for his family. I had no reason to question it. Not after all these years. We had been together since we were young. High school sweethearts. The kind of couple people smiled at and said, "They'll last." We grew up side by side, learning each other's habits, memorizing each other's silences. He knew how I took my coffee. I knew when he needed space. Our life wasn't perfect, but it felt safe. And safety has a way of making you stop looking over your shoulder. I replied, "Okay. Drive safe." No heart emoji. No extra words. Love didn't need decoration. Love was built on trust, on consistency, on believing that the person you chose would never deliberately hurt you. I finished cooking and set the table for two, then quietly put one plate back into the cabinet. That had become normal too. I ate alone, scrolling through my phone, half watching a show I'd already seen. Everything felt predictable. Controlled. But isn't that how lies survive? They don't arrive loudly. They live inside routine. Inside habits. Inside the comfort of believing nothing bad could happen to you. I washed the dishes, wiped the counters, and folded a small pile of laundry on the couch. His shirt was on top. I paused for a moment, holding it, breathing in a scent I had trusted for years. This is my marriage. This is my life. That thought didn't come from fear. It came from certainty. My phone buzzed again. Not from him. From a number I didn't recognize. I didn't open it right away. I finished folding the last towel, placed it neatly on the stack, and only then picked up my phone. Standing there, barefoot on the living room rug, I had no idea that this ordinary night was already slipping away from me. I had no idea that the text I trusted so easily was the first crack in something that would completely shatter. I believed honesty was the foundation of my life because it always had been. I believed love protected you from cruelty. I believed routine meant security. That night taught me a truth I would never forget. The most believable lies are the ones wrapped in years of trust. If this feels familiar, stay with me, because sometimes the truth doesn't come with warning. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, dressed as an ordinary night. Losing a friend happens quietly, until you realize why. She had been in my life longer than my husband. We met when we were kids, the kind of friendship that grows roots before you even know what loyalty means. We shared secrets, clothes, dreams, and fears. She knew the story of my life because she had lived inside it with me. When I fell in love, she stood beside me. When I got married, she helped me pick my dress. She called my husband her brother and laughed like we were all family. 4 years, it felt unbreakable. That's why I didn't notice the shift at first. Or maybe I noticed it and chose not to name it. The calls became shorter. The replies took longer. Plans were cancelled at the last minute with easy excuses: work, travel, exhaustion. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that sounded like a lie. Life gets busy. People change. That's what I told myself. Still, something felt different. She stopped asking how I was doing. When we did meet, her smile didn't reach her eyes. She listened, but not the way she used to. Like her mind was somewhere else, somewhere I wasn't invited anymore. Was I imagining it? I replayed our conversations in my head, looking for the moment I had done something wrong. Maybe I was asking for too much. Maybe I was holding on to a version of her that no longer existed. Friendships, like people, grow apart sometimes. I knew that. I accepted that. Or at least, I tried to. I remember one afternoon when I called her just to talk, the way we used to. It rang and rang before going to voicemail. She texted hours later, apologizing, saying she'd been busy. The words were polite. Careful. Almost distant. She's still my best friend, I told myself. I'm just overthinking. But there were moments that stayed with me. The way she avoided eye contact when my husband's name came up. The way she changed the subject quickly. The way she no longer dropped by our house like she used to. She used to know everything about my marriage, our jokes, our small fights, our future plans. Now, she barely asked about him at all. And yet, nothing was clear enough to confront. No proof. No obvious betrayal. Just a quiet feeling that something precious was slipping away, slowly, gently, without a sound. I didn't accuse. I didn't ask hard questions. I chose peace over discomfort. I chose trust over doubt. I believed that if something was truly wrong, it would be loud. Obvious. Impossible to ignore. But betrayal doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just creates distance. Sometimes it wears the mask of normal change. Sometimes it hides behind silence. I told myself I was lucky to have known her as long as I had. I told myself that friendships don't need constant closeness to remain real. I told myself to stop worrying. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't then. The pain wasn't in what she did. It was in what she stopped doing. The most dangerous distance is the one that grows slowly, quiet enough to ignore, painful enough to remember. I didn't know why I was going. I just knew I had to. The message didn't have a name. No greeting. No explanation. Just a location pin and a time. For a few seconds, I stared at my phone, waiting for something else to appear. Another message. A typo. Anything that would make it make sense. But the screen stayed quiet, glowing back at me like it was daring me to ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. My first instinct was to ignore it. People send wrong messages all the time. Numbers get mixed up. Mistakes happen. I told myself it had nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with my life. Nothing to do with the text my husband had sent earlier that evening. And yet, my chest felt tight. I checked the address again. I knew that part of town. I had driven past it many times without thinking twice. Still, something about seeing it written there, paired with a specific time, made my hands feel cold. Why would a stranger send this to me? I sat down on the edge of the couch, phone resting in my palm. The house felt too quiet now. The kind of quiet that makes your own thoughts sound louder. I told myself to breathe. To be reasonable. To stop letting my imagination run ahead of me. This is nothing, I thought. You're safe. Your life is normal. But there was a feeling I couldn't explain. A pull. Not panic. Not fear. Something deeper. Like a warning whispered too softly to ignore. I opened my calendar without thinking. I checked the time again. My husband wouldn't be home for hours. If I went, I could be back before he ever knew I had left. That thought scared me more than the message itself. I paced the room, trying to talk myself out of it. Every logical voice in my head told me to stay where I was. To delete the message. To protect my peace. But another voice, quieter and steadier, kept repeating the same thing. Go. I grabbed my keys and paused at the door, my hand resting on the handle longer than it should have. For a moment, I wondered if this was the exact second where everything could still stay the same, if I just chose not to step outside. What if I was wrong? What if I was right? I locked the door behind me and walked to my car. The night air felt heavier than usual. Street lights blurred past as I drove, my thoughts moving faster than the road beneath me. I didn't cry. I didn't pray. I just followed the directions, one turn at a time. I didn't know what I was expecting to find. I only knew that whatever waited for me at that address was already part of my story, whether I wanted it to be or not. Some choices don't feel brave in the moment. They feel inevitable. Sometimes curiosity isn't weakness, it's the moment your soul refuses to stay blind. That's when I saw him, and nothing made sense anymore. The church doors were already open when I arrived. Soft music drifted out into the night, gentle and calm, the kind meant to soothe hearts. For a second, I hesitated on the steps, my hand hovering in the air like my body already knew what my mind was still refusing to accept. I told myself it was probably nothing. A rehearsal. A stranger's wedding. A misunderstanding waiting to be cleared. I stepped inside. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of flowers. White petals lined the aisle, glowing under warm lights. Guests sat quietly, smiling, whispering to one another. It was beautiful. Peaceful. And then I saw him. He stood at the altar, tall and familiar, wearing a tuxedo I had never seen before. His hair was neatly styled, his posture confident. He looked calm. Happy. Like a man exactly where he was meant to be. My husband. For a moment, my mind rejected what my eyes were showing me. My body refused to move. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. I blinked hard, once, twice, waiting for the image to disappear. It didn't. Was this some kind of cruel mistake? I followed his gaze to the other end of the aisle. The doors at the back of the church opened slowly, and everyone stood. The music changed. That's when I saw her. She walked toward him in a white dress, her hair styled perfectly, her face calm and glowing. She looked confident. Certain. Like this was the future she had chosen. My best friend. The world around me faded into a dull, distant sound. I couldn't hear the music anymore. I couldn't feel my feet on the floor. I stood frozen in the back of the church, unseen, unnoticed, as my life rearranged itself in front of me. This isn't real, I told myself. It can't be. But it was. They smiled at each other in a way I had never seen before. Not once in all the years I had loved him. Not once in all the times she had hugged me and told me she cared. Their hands met. Fingers intertwining like it was the most natural thing in the world. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run down the aisle and demand answers. I wanted someone, anyone, to look at me and realize I didn't belong there as a stranger. But no one did. I was invisible. The vows began, but I barely heard the words. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure someone must hear it. I thought I might collapse, but my body stayed upright, locked in place by shock. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was planned. As I stood there, watching the two people I trusted most promise their lives to each other, I understood something that changed me forever. Some betrayals don't come with warnings. They come with flowers and music and smiles. The deepest betrayal is realizing the people you trusted most chose each other over the truth. I didn't interrupt the wedding. I documented it. I stayed where I was, hidden in the shadows at the back of the church. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to shout, to stop everything. My legs trembled, my hands felt numb, and my chest burned with words I couldn't release. But instead of falling apart, I reached slowly into my bag and took out my phone. I pressed record. The screen glowed softly in my palm as the ceremony continued. Their voices echoed through the church, steady, confident, certain. He spoke his vows without hesitation, the same voice that once promised to protect me. She smiled through hers, her eyes shining, the same eyes that had watched me cry on her shoulder. How could something so cruel look so calm? I didn't cry. Not yet. I didn't scream. Not yet. I watched. I watched the priest bless their union. I watched their hands tighten together. I watched the guests nod approvingly, unaware they were celebrating a lie built on my life. Stay still, I told myself. If you break now, you lose everything. My breathing became slow and controlled, like I was watching a scene from someone else's story. I zoomed in carefully, capturing faces, vows, rings. Every second felt unreal, but I made myself stay present. I needed proof, not for revenge, but for truth. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. This was about survival. When the words, "You may kiss the bride," were spoken, the room erupted in quiet joy. Applause followed. Smiles widened. And I stood there, invisible, recording the moment my marriage officially ended without my consent. Did they think I would never find out? As they kissed, something inside me changed. The pain was still there, sharp and heavy, but beneath it was a new feeling, clarity. I realized that if I allowed this moment to destroy me, they would take more than my husband and my friend. They would take my future. So I chose silence over chaos. I chose memory over madness. I chose patience over pain. When the guests began to stand, preparing to celebrate, I stopped the recording. My hands were steady now. My heart was still broken, but my mind was awake. I turned and walked out of the church quietly, the same way I had entered, unseen, unheard, but no longer unaware. Instead of screaming or collapsing, she chooses stillness, knowing this moment will define what comes next. The signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. That night, after I left the church, I didn't go home. I sat alone in my car, the engine off, the world outside the windshield blurred by tears I had finally allowed to fall. My mind began to rewind itself, playing memories I once wrapped in excuses and called love. The late nights came back first. "I'm working late," he would say, almost casually. I believed him because I wanted to. I reheated dinner alone, saved him a plate, and told myself marriage required patience. When he came home smelling unfamiliar, I blamed overtime and exhaustion. Why didn't I ask more questions? Then there were the phone calls he stepped outside to take. The way his screen would turn dark the moment I walked into the room. I told myself privacy was healthy. Trust was mature. Love was not suspicious. I defended him even when my heart whispered warnings. I remembered the charges on our bank statement, hotels, gifts, dinners that were never meant for me. I laughed them off, convincing myself they were work-related expenses or surprises he hadn't revealed yet. I wanted to be the wife who believed, not the woman who doubted. Even my best friend had changed. She cancelled plans more often. Her voice felt distant, distracted. When I asked if something was wrong, she smiled and said she was just busy. I believed her too. I trusted the history between us more than the unease growing in my chest. Love has a way of making lies feel reasonable. I thought about how I stopped asking questions because the answers scared me. How I chose comfort over clarity. How I protected their secrets without knowing they were stealing my life behind my back. Every ignored sign now felt like a quiet betrayal I had committed against myself. I wasn't foolish. I wasn't blind. I was hopeful. And hope can be dangerous when it isn't met with truth. The realization hurt more than the wedding itself. Knowing the betrayal wasn't sudden, it was carefully built, piece by piece, while I stood in the same rooms believing I was safe. If I had listened to my instincts, would things be different? The weight of regret settled deep in my chest, heavy and unmovable. But with it came something else, a promise I made silently to myself. I would never again silence my intuition to protect someone else's lies. Because trust should never require self-betrayal. Regret settles in as she realizes how deeply the betrayal was hidden. This wasn't an affair, it was a strategy. When I finally returned home, the house felt unfamiliar. The walls stood quietly, holding secrets I never knew they carried. Every room looked the same, yet everything felt different, like the truth had been living there long before I was ready to see it. I moved slowly, carefully, as if the house itself might react to my questions. I didn't confront him. I didn't call anyone. I searched. His laptop was the first place I looked. My hands trembled as I typed in passwords I knew by heart. Email after email opened like doors I had never dared to knock on. Messages filled with dates, plans, and careful words meant to avoid discovery. Wedding arrangements. Guest lists. Conversations that spoke of me as an obstacle, not a wife. How long had this been happening right under my roof? Then I found the second phone. It was hidden in a drawer beneath old paperwork, switched off, forgotten only because he believed I would never look. When I turned it on, my heart dropped. Months of messages. Pictures. Voice notes. Promises of a future already in motion. They planned this while I cooked dinners and waited for him. Each discovery tightened my chest, but I forced myself to keep going. I needed to see it all, no matter how much it hurt. Truth, even when brutal, is still better than living in a lie. In a folder labeled Documents, I found something that made my breath stop. A prenup. At first glance, it looked familiar. Too familiar. My name was there. My signature was there. But I knew, instantly, that it wasn't mine. The dates were wrong. The wording was altered. The pages had been edited carefully, deliberately. It was forged. This wasn't just betrayal of the heart. This was betrayal of safety. Of future. Of trust. He hadn't just fallen in love with someone else. He had planned to erase me quietly, legally, emotionally, without ever giving me a chance to defend myself. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone and papers. Heavy in my hands, my mind racing with a clarity I had never felt before. This was no accident. No moment of weakness. This was a decision made again and again. Did he ever feel guilty? I wiped my tears, not because the pain was gone, but because I understood something vital now. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't crazy. I had been targeted. And once you see the truth clearly, you stop being afraid of it. The discovery of a forged prenup confirms this betrayal was deliberate, not accidental. He thought I was calm because I was okay, he was wrong. The next morning, I woke up beside him like nothing had happened. I made breakfast. I asked how his night was. I listened as he lied to my face with the same ease he always had. His voice didn't shake. His hands didn't hesitate. And that hurt more than anger ever could. Inside, I was changing. I smiled when he spoke. I nodded when he complained about work. I became the version of myself he expected, quiet, trusting, unthreatening. He thought my calm meant forgiveness, or maybe ignorance. He didn't realize my silence had a purpose. Every day after that, I gathered pieces of the truth. I copied emails when he wasn't home. I saved messages, screenshots, call logs. I backed everything up twice, hiding it where he would never think to look. I watched him carefully, learning his routines the same way he had studied mine. Stay steady, I reminded myself. This isn't the time to fall apart. At night, I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing. He slept peacefully, unaware that the life he built on lies was already cracking. I didn't touch him. I didn't accuse him. I let him believe he was still in control. Why would I want someone who was preparing to erase me? I contacted a lawyer quietly. I opened a private account. I secured copies of important documents, my identity, my finances, my future. Each step I took felt like reclaiming a small piece of myself. There were moments when my heart begged me to confront him, to scream and demand answers. But I knew confrontation would only give him time to prepare. Silence, however, gave me power. I learned that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it plans. When he kissed my forehead and said he might be working late again, I smiled and wished him a good day. Inside, I felt steady, not because the pain was gone, but because I was ready. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I was preparing for consequences. And for the first time since the night I walked into that church, I felt something close to control. Her silence becomes her strength as she prepares for consequences, not confrontation. I didn't destroy them, the truth did. The truth doesn't shout at first. It moves quietly, from one place to another, like a letter finally reaching the hands it was meant for. I didn't announce anything. I didn't post online. I didn't make a scene. I simply let the evidence go where it belonged. To lawyers. To workplaces. To families who deserve to know. One message at a time, the walls they built began to crack. Questions started coming, careful at first, then urgent. His office wanted explanations. Her family wanted answers. Invitations were withdrawn. Calls went unanswered. Smiles faded into confusion, then embarrassment. What happens when secrets are no longer protected? I watched from a distance as their perfect story unraveled. The wedding photos they were so proud of were suddenly examined with different eyes. Dates didn't add up. Documents didn't match. Lies that once felt harmless now had consequences. This is what accountability sounds like, I thought. He came home quieter than usual. His confidence dimmed. He avoided my eyes, not because he felt sorry, but because he knew something was wrong. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. She stopped calling. Stopped posting. Stopped pretending. The world that once celebrated them now whispered about them. And whispers can be louder than screams. There was shame, not because they were exposed, but because they were seen clearly. Not as lovers defying odds, but as two people who chose deception over dignity. Did they expect the truth to stay buried forever? I felt no joy in watching them fall. Only a strange calm. This wasn't revenge. It was balance. The truth has weight, and eventually, it tips the scales. Their new life, built carefully on silence and lies, began to collapse under the simplest force, honesty. Doors closed. Support vanished. Trust evaporated. And me? I stood firm. I learned something powerful in that moment. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to destroy to be strong. You only have to stop protecting lies that were never yours to carry. The couple's carefully built new life starts collapsing as questions, shame, and accountability replaced secrecy. I didn't lose my marriage. I found myself. The courtroom was quiet, almost serene, but the weight in the room was undeniable. I sat with my lawyer, calm and composed, watching the pieces of my life, the evidence I had carefully gathered, laid out clearly for everyone to see. He sat across from me, eyes downcast, knowing that charm and excuses could no longer rewrite reality. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel gloating satisfaction. I felt relief. Relief that the truth had finally been heard, that I had finally taken control of a story that wasn't meant to be rewritten by anyone but me. Was this really the closure I had been waiting for? Every lie he told, every secret he kept, every smile they shared at my expense, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was me, my dignity, my voice, my freedom. The judge listened patiently, reviewed every document, every screenshot, every hidden plan. And when the decision came, it wasn't a dramatic proclamation. It was justice served quietly, with clarity. The house, the car, the support I had a right to, it was all mine. Fair, unshakable, undeniable. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Air filling my lungs. Light spilling into my chest. Life stretching ahead with a weight lifted from my shoulders. I wasn't walking away broken, I was walking forward whole. He tried to reach me afterward, said he made mistakes, that he missed me, that he thought things could be fixed. I smiled politely, and in that smile was a calm the past years could never have taught him. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to justify. My silence said everything. Some things are not worth revisiting. Some people are not worth saving. I didn't reply to her messages either. The friend who had betrayed me had lost her influence, her control, her place in my life. I didn't need her apology to validate my strength. The world had already seen what I had known all along. That evening, I walked alone down a quiet street. The sky above me glowed with the soft light of sunset. I paused, breathed deeply, and felt the power of choice settle into my bones. I chose me. I chose truth. I chose to keep my name, my story, my integrity intact. No loud declarations. No public revenge. Just me, quietly reclaiming what was mine all along. And in that quiet, I found the loudest strength I had ever known. The narrator chooses herself, proving that silence can be stronger than revenge.